Good morning from Helsinki. It's been a while since I did a video. I had been doing them almost every day when I was on the trail walking every day because it was something that I built into my schedule. Now that I'm back in the city in Helsinki, even though it often doesn't feel like a city with all the parks and nature and the sea, um, I have a lot of things I'm doing. Um, I have to go to a lot of offices. I have another appointment today. I'm a citizen, but now that I'm living here full time, I need to take care of some items, and then I have to go to this office and that office, and um, it eats into my writing, editing, and coffee time. Anyway, speaking of living with the questions, I wanted to do a little bit of Rainer Maria Rilke in Bly's translation again. Rilke was, of course, a poet who lived about half his life in the 19th century and half in the 20th century. He was born in Prague, Austria-Hungary, or as it was back in 1875. And then he lived a fairly brief life, I guess you'd say. I believe he died at 51. They believe he had, I think, leukemia, and he was living in Montreux, Switzerland. In case you haven't read Rilke, it used to be, I don't know if it's true anymore, but a lot of high school and college students who were into theater and literature and things like that, they always found Rilke. And he's known for writing these very, very, very deep, penetrating, soulful poems. Sometimes it's kind of excess, I think. And I think Bly noted that. Bly translated his poems and was very influenced by him, but I think he felt that some of them, it was just a bit too much. It was just overblown, overwrought, like the Duino elegies. And so Bly liked like the sonnets to Orpheus, and he liked some of his shorter, briefer, younger poems like. Then this one inspired Bly his whole life, and he kind of copied it, I think, sometimes unknowingly in some ways, where Rilke at a very young age said, I live my life in growing orbits which move out over the things of the world. I may never achieve the last, but that will be my attempt. I'm circling around God, around the ancient tower. And I've been circling for 1,000 years, but I still don't know if I'm a falcon or a storm or a great song. And so that was a lyric I think he wrote when he was in his early 20s. But of course, Rilke went through many interesting, long, depressive states in his life, and he was fortunate in that he often found himself in the care of minor royals in castles in Central and Southern Europe. Like he spent, I don't know how many years in near Trieste. But yeah, he seemed to make good friends in the royal courts, and but he was he was a wanderer, he was a walker, he was a melancholic. One of my favorite stories, which is in, I think, just in his journals, is he talks about going to Egypt and sneaking in and being able to sleep all night, kind of with the Sphinx, I think. Maybe I said that in an odd way, but he claims that he was able to spend an entire evening amongst the Egyptian ruins, or what we take to be, or what was discovered, or what is told to us in the history books. And so I wanted to do a couple of his poems, and I also like him because he embraced the quiet, the stillness, the sadness in life. And he said, which is a message I think could be revived 100 years later in our contemporary society, where everything is bent on finding quick solutions and the easy answers and happiness in kind of a cheap sense, is that he said our creative self our deeper self pushes through this sadness and deals with these tough questions. And it's not about avoiding and denial. It's about embracing it and learning from it. And that he thought that sadness, melancholy, was when something new had entered our life, and we have to sit with it, learn from that stillness, and understand the strangeness in the midst of everything. Like, no matter what, we're very ill-equipped for this life in many ways, and not that we can't be productive and joyful and all these things, but he said you also have to learn from the sadness and let it enter you and fully experience it and live the questions. I love that. He has a poem where he talks about that. But I want to do this one that Bly translated, and of course I like wanderers, meanderers, walkers, because I am one. I'm the world's number one walking enthusiast. And so he says in this one, he says, my eyes already touch the sunny hill, going far ahead of the road I have begun. So we are grasped by what we cannot grasp. It has its inner light even from a distance, and changes us, even if we do not reach it, into something else, which hardly sensing it, we already are. A gesture waves us on, answering our own wave. But what we feel is the wind in our faces. So I think that poem kind of brings along some of the themes, and I know Robert Bly was particularly struck by this line, is like, so we are grasped by what we cannot grasp, and also kind of the tactile sense of sight, and that when we're walking around, it's kind of interesting to think about these ideas of vision and how it relates to our other senses, especially touch. And we could go on about that, but I love that line, so we are grasped by what we cannot grasp. It has its inner light even from a distance. And I like how that links back to the Harry Martinson poem, The Inner Light, that I read some weeks ago when I was in Sweden, which talks about, in a scientific sense as well as in a spiritual sense, this idea of the inner light. And then lastly, I'm going to do, moving forward, the deep parts of my life pour onward, as if the river shores were opening out. It seems that things are more like me now, that I can see farther into paintings. I feel closer to what language can't reach. With my sense, as with birds, I climb into the windy heaven, out of the oak, and in the ponds broken off from the sky, my feeling sinks as if standing on fishes. And again, it's like I hear echoes of Rilke in a lot of Robert Bly's poetry, actually in those three in particular. And I think he was so deeply influenced that I think he didn't know, not that he was plagiarizing, but I mean, if you talk to any great artist, like, they really learn by plagiarizing, by copying the other great writers and thinkers and spirits in the age, and then they add something to it. But there's there's so much that's already been discovered and said in such gorgeous ways, and we can interpret in our own time these same ideas, but the themes are not are not that various in human life. I don't know if I'm saying that in a way that's intelligible, but what we can add to the body of work that's already been created is very little, but significant. And I think Robert understood that deeply. He maybe didn't talk about that openly, but I mean, he's someone who pushed the boundaries further and further, and brought out so many interesting pathways into understanding our souls and our place in this odd realm we find ourselves in. But yeah, I love Rilke's early, more less less worked over, less studious, less pondersome poetry. Although I do love some of the Duino elegies where he just goes so deeply and elegantly into all of the deepest things you can feel. Although sometimes it's a little bit much, but he was an extraordinary spirit, and he was very generous with his time. Like he had this amazing correspondence with so many people. Some people he met randomly, and he would help them understand some of these deeper levels of meaning and encourage them to be adventurous explorers like he was in the spirit and in what we can do in this realm. So those are some like little naive thoughts about Rilke. Moving forward, A Walk by Bly, and then of course the kind of like the preamble to all of Rilke's poetry and to Robert Bly's poetry is Living Your Life in Growing Orbits. So I will sign off for now. I have to get back down into the center of Helsinki. I have to go to 2 offices today, and I'm hoping to go to a wood sauna today, wood-fired sauna. And that's also, you know, that's the Finnish spirit, the forest spirit and the sauna spirit. And like the modern ones are nice, but it's nice to go to like the old-fashioned, real wood-fired saunas. So I will be in the spirit world today, and I hope you are too, on some degree. And we will talk again soon. Thank you so much.